You there? You there? Hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hey, what's up, buddy?
Not much. How are you today?
Good. How about you?
Not bad. So
Good to
we
see.
agreed today, correct?
Say that again.
We agreed today, right? I have the script already.
Yeah. So give me 1 second, man. Let me close my door here. Hold on 1 second.
All right, I'm doing the same thing.
Oh, man.
Oh, shoot. Hold on one moment.
Gonna refill my water real quick. Give me one quick sec. Actually, no, I just did that. Come on, Bailey. Bailey, come on. Bailey. Oh. All right.
All right, just give me 1 second. All right. Okay, so yeah. All right, so I'm fun. Welcome everybody back to Pick Your Brains with Benjamin, or Pick Your Brains podcast. Today I have the honor of bringing on a fellow entrepreneur from LinkedIn. We see him all over LinkedIn with his podcast posting and different stuff that's always eye-catchy and interesting. He's definitely a great marketer. I'm going to introduce Billy Samoa Sallabey. How are you today?
Great. Good to see you and good to hang out. You know, I'm a big fan of yours as well. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to have a conversation. So let's dive in and do it.
All right. So, first question I'm going to ask you today for our audience. All right. You're from Gen X, which I think growing up for millennials, we watched a lot of the 16 we watched a lot of the Molly Ringwald, Emilio Estevez movies. Which of those movies were your favorites?
Oh man. Well, you got it. I mean, when you say those two actors, you got to go with The Breakfast Club. In my opinion, sure, 16 Candles is great and there's some other great ones, but The Breakfast Club is you just like cannot beat that movie. What's your favorite?
Actually, it was The Breakfast Club, and the reason I like The Breakfast Club is because in the the first 16 Candles was just kind of romantic and boring, but Breakfast Club, it was just everything about school that I thought it would be like, but it never was. But it was just funny how it was portrayed that way.
Good. I love the way you put that, right? And such a good point. And I mean, there's so many good movies from that era, though. Fast Times at Ridgemont High. You got Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You got like all these movies that like coming of age
Oh my
movies.
God, Big with Tom Hanks,
Oh my
Ferris
God.
Bueller's Day Off. That is a classic.
So many. I mean, I even love like Stand By Me or Goonies, or I mean, Back to the Future, like all these movies that have like young versions of actors that we know today. There's just, and the list is endless. There's, in fact, I'm doing, this is a sneak peek. I'm actually doing a podcast with my son all about coming of age movies. So we're just now
So he's
starting to
going to
form.
grow up on some of the classics that you grew up on.
Exactly. You got it, man.
All right. So the next question that I would like to ask you to. All right. So your father is from what we call the silent generation. Because I think he was born the same year. What was it, 1944?
My father's born 48.
So he is an actual baby boomer.
He is. Yeah, he would fall into the baby boomer. Yep.
Did he have children young? Because I know some baby boomers, especially in the late, in like from 1946 to 1950, did have kids young. Like I know
So,
Eminem's parents, for example, had him in like the 70s.
yeah. So I was born in 77. So he was 29. I think it was, yeah. No, sorry. Yeah. He was 29 when I was born. So it depends. It depends what part of the world you're talking about. Some people would say that's very old for having kids. If you're in LA, that's very young.
Well, yes, in the Los Angeles part of the world. I mean, I my sister who just got married last year's her mother was is actually born in 1967, but both her parents are one is a baby boomer, her mother, her father was a silent generation because
Hmm.
he's about 80. And they were
Okay.
both from France. So I would assume for some boomers, it was normal to have children, at the start of the boomers generation, who are Gen
Yeah.
Xers. Okay, so it looks like from your LinkedIn, you did grow up in Los Angeles. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I spent most of my life here in SoCal, in Los Angeles specifically. Also, was born in American Samoa, which is why my middle name is Samoa, but I was only there for 6 months. And then I lived in New York in 2003, and I lived in London in 2000. I love
What were
big
you
cities.
doing? What were you doing work-wise when you lived in New York?
Great question. So I was waiting tables at Sushi Samba and Blue Water Grill. And then the reason I was doing that is I was writing the screenplay for my movie that I was working on called Rolling. So I'm a Californian who moves to New York to write a screenplay. That happened.
Very interesting. We're going to get to that part of this later on because since you are in media and broadcasting and it looks like you started a few businesses, we're going to touch on that a little later, but right now we're going to focus on kind of the early parts, a little bit of your life. So, did you play sports when you were in high school?
Yeah, I played baseball and football. Baseball was my main sport, but I did play a year of football, and it was loved every minute of it. Sports was a big part of my youth growing up. I excelled at baseball. It's on the all-star team and did pretty well in high school, and ended up playing my first year of college with the team with the college that I went to, Loyola Marymount. So yeah, I love sports, and to this day, baseball is a big part of my life because my son plays baseball.
Ah, that's good. So you get to watch little guy play baseball, which is good as a parent. Did
Mm.
you get to play sports when you went to college?
A little bit. So I was like, if you've ever seen the movie Rudy, I was Rudy. So I went to a D1 school, so it's a very good school. I
So you
walked
were
on.
actually 5'6"?
Yeah, yeah. I'm 5'7". Give me that extra inch. I'm 5'7".
5'6", 5'7", five
Yeah,
foot nothing, 100 and nothing, and you
exactly,
still were
exactly.
able to compete with Division I
Yeah.
athletes.
So
We all
so
loved Rudy growing up. That was honestly, you're born in 77. I was born 10 years, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85. I was born 9 years later. We grew up on exactly the same movies.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, and
It's
even today, I mean, like I said, my son's enjoying these movies too. And not all of them hold up. Most of them do, but some you're like, it doesn't quite hold up like it did.
well, let me point this out. Rudy, no matter what top five you do for sports movies, Rudy has to be in that. I'm sorry. It's the way that movie was made. It was genius. When you had a young John Favreau and a young Vince Vaughn, just the way it was done, it was great. The story was done still to this day. And literally after I saw that movie, first or second time, I ended up becoming a Notre Dame fan. How could
Right?
you?
I know. So many people became Notre Dame fans because of that movie. That's so funny.
But it's because of the way it was scripted and done.
Yeah.
I mean, it really gave you an idea of what middle America was like at that time. You know, we feel bad sometimes for them this day, but that's another story. Okay, so what was your first major in college, or what was your major in college originally?
It's a good quiz. I'm glad you asked it the way you did because I actually had two. So I was business major. So I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. In junior high, I was selling lollipops, like the little blow pops. I'd buy a big box, sell them for a quarter each. So I thought I wanted to go into business, but I quickly realized I did not like econ, the class. So I switched my major to be a film major in college. And then I was film major, theater minor.
So I'm going to tell you a very quick story on to play off of that. Okay. The mission of this podcast, Pick Your Brains and Opinionated Collective, are both active autism activism, especially with where you live. I'm sure you're well aware of this, and because you worked with someone, there are many people in the Hollywood, in the Hollywood realm who I would probably say are on the autistic spectrum, diagnosed or undiagnosed.
For sure.
I would say most of these Hollywood directors are probably on the spectrum on some level. You could correct me if I'm wrong on that, but
I think well, it's called spectrum for a reason, right? And
yes.
I would not disagree with that assessment. I think you're very much spot on. And to your point, I think a lot of them are probably undiagnosed. That doesn't mean they're not on the spectrum.
No, they definitely are. And it's kind of funny because we're going to touch on this particular one later because of the fact that he's very controversial in the media. But anyway, the mission of this is activism for autism. So since one question I would throw in there and ask you is, did you have experiences being among students on the autism spectrum? And if so, did you have any friendships with them, or did you work among them as well, or both?
Mm-hmm. So my nephew's autistic. That's my closest proximity to anyone on the spectrum, having watched him grow up, be a part of his life. And to this day, he was here a few weeks ago and we got to hang out. So that would be the closest from just a meaningful relationship standpoint. As far as working, like you've said, right, there's people who probably weren't diagnosed who would be on the spectrum, who I worked with, but it was never something that came up or something that was talked about. I think in retrospect, you might look back and say, okay, maybe there might be some things that you would have noticed if you were looking. But ultimately, the way I operate is everyone that lives this life, give them pure love and kindness and respect, whether you're, where they're from, the neurodiversity, the
autistic spectrum, Asperger's syndrome, whatever you want to
call
it.
Yeah, whatever it is, just give everybody love. And it's like, whatever you're talking about, and it could be anything. It could be age, could be where they're from, their socioeconomic background. Like, because somebody might act differently, say things differently, doesn't mean you treat them any less. And so that would be my, as far as activism goes, I think the bottom line is, human beings are human beings. Let's wrap our arms around each other and give each other love.
Well, I'm going to touch on a very interesting point because unfortunately, within the last 2 months, we've, and in our own lifetimes as well, there's not been a lot of politically good stuff going on. And one thing you just mentioned right there, which I would 100% agree with, is we all need to learn how to respect and love one another. Because what I see, sadly, with the older generations is too much bickering and fighting for everyone. And we're all getting sick of it.
Couldn't agree more. It's an epidemic, and I think it's only gotten worse,
especially for both of us being in media. I gotta say this. Can we get the mainstream media to just stop with the useless headlines trying to start and stop to basically, can we get the media to stop with running all these bad headlines every day?
Yeah, good luck with that. I mean, they're always going to do something that's going to bring the audience and that's going to reel people in. It's their version of clickbait. So for us who do social media, we're trying to get attention, right? Trying to gather the most elusive thing that we have, which is our eyeballs, our attention, and most people, including major media companies, they're not gonna hold back on doing things that might be unfavorable. They're gonna look for the easiest path. So unfortunately, that's just the nature of the beast. I hope it changes, but I guess I'm not as optimistic in that way.
I don't think I'm optimistic either because, and it's funny, especially with Israel and Palestine, I've completely stayed out of this over the last couple months. When I was on previous social media platforms, I used to get into it, but I learned an important lesson once I came over to LinkedIn and once I found the mission of, what my two podcasts and my eventual media broadcast media company are going to be.
Yeah.
I learned, unfortunately, on Facebook, you got to stay out of things because, whether you're building a business or you're hoping to gain your first job or a job later on in life with someone, they're probably not going to hire somebody who doesn't agree with them.
Well, the chances are 50% of people aren't going to agree with you. Like that's just the nature
Oh, I
of the way
accepted
things
that a
shake
long
it.
time ago.
Yeah, it's just
I
the
accepted a
nature of the
long
game.
time ago. I'm going to find my tribe of people who are going to agree with me. And I'm going to find my tribe of people who aren't, and I'm not going to be liked by everyone, but that's completely okay. It's just like what we've seen with me before. And you pointed this out one day about me that you respected most about me. When I see things that I disagree with on LinkedIn, I'll call it out, but I'll do it in a polite way,
Yeah.
not just jump on their post and say, "Well, I don't think this." Actually, no. The ways I do it is very intelligent. It's actually for people like yourself who might not be, necessarily attached to the idea of the post, but it's for other eyes. They
Mhm.
present an idea of what they think is best for a job seeker to get a job. I'll come in and say, well, here's another thought. Why don't you people who are doing jobs try to do what me and Billy do on a daily basis, which is create something. There's
Mm.
somebody who I've been following for the last 5, 6 months that I have respect for. I don't agree with her because she brought someone on very controversial, but you're familiar with Cody Sanchez, right?
Yes. Yes. Uh-huh.
I think her broadcast media channel is great. The way she does YouTube is amazing. The way she puts herself out there to suggest about buying boring businesses or boomer run businesses, which honestly, this is something that I eventually, I'm starting to research on how to do this and, ways to acquire it.
Mm.
Separate from the fact that I didn't like the person that she brought on, I still respect her because of the way she puts herself out there within the media and some of the suggestions that she gives.
Mm. What do you liked about the way she does it? What's the thing that stands out?
The thing that stands out about it is when she uses the term, instead of trying to go with all these unicorn startups, why don't you just find a way to invest into self-storage, a nail salon? Let's see, what else has she put on that I've liked? Oh, CPA firm, cash
Got it.
flow
Got it.
businesses.
So boring
It,
businesses. She's advocating like you don't need to have the next, new
you don't need
idea.
to do an AI startup because AI startups right now probably are not having the most success out there. I would imagine you agree on this point,
Oh
correct?
God. Well, yeah, it's like everybody and their mother is starting something. And so my belief is that AI as a standalone business and AI can work, but you're swimming upstream and it's going to be very, very challenging. My thing is, how do you embed AI into your business to allow you to be more effective, efficient, and productive to make the offering to the end user, your customer, your client better and cheaper? That's what I think AI should be used for. And anyone, like I just watched a video with Daniel Priestley yesterday. He goes, the biggest mistake somebody is going to make, and they're going to look back on 10 years, is or the biggest question people are going to ask, I should say, is how quickly and effectively did they integrate AI into their business? That's the biggest question people are going to be asking 10 years from now. Something along those
That's
lines.
one I would agree with. So, speaking of AI, we're gonna now start with some of. Okay, you worked at Varango. What was that process like? Coming out of college.
Yeah, so I by the time I worked for Varango, I'd already made a movie, I'd already worked in restaurants, managed restaurants, worked for big film sets, worked on major motion pictures. So it wasn't my out of college job, but it was my first job in the renewable space. And it was the first job where I made significant money. I mean, I made six figures my first year. And the reason why is I was good at building rapport and relationships with my clients, who are basically homeowners who wanted to lower their electric cost by putting solar panels on their roof with no out-of-pocket cost, and just pay us, the solar company, to provide their electricity. That's a simple way of describing it. That then led to my next role at Solar City and then Tesla.
So Solar City so Solar City was bought out by Tesla, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So the way my story sort of transitioned is I I set a record for sales at Varengo. I sold more than anybody else did in a single month. I did over $1 million revenue in 1 month for Varengo as a salesperson, independent salesperson. So then they gave me some more responsibility. I managed a team. Then they gave me responsibility to be the head of training. Then they gave me the responsibility to be the head of all of sales. So as the VP of sales, I got recruited as the VP of sales to go work at Solar City, where I then ran all of sales training for Solar City. They're the biggest solar player in the country at the time. And I led leadership development. And then, to your point, Tesla was owned at the time and started by Elon Musk's cousins. So he acquired the whole company. And then I got the opportunity to build the onboarding, the new hire training for Tesla employees globally. So anybody that starts at Tesla,
So
my
it was
team created
actually,
that training.
Elon's cousins actually started Tesla, and it
No,
was
they
a
started Solar
family
City. They started Solar
business.
City.
Oh, they started Solar City. Now, let
Got
me ask you a very interesting question about him with Tesla.
it.
Who were the actual founders of Tesla?
Yeah, so this is great. Most people don't know this. So it was actually founded, I think, in 2003, and Elon basically he joined the company and then basically bought them out. And to be honest, I don't.
Whereas just like PayPal was a merger of Cofinity, and the real brain and
Yeah.
the actual person who's really credited with starting PayPal was actually Peter Thiel.
Peter Thiel, yeah, exactly. And so
Now, Peter Thiel and Elon are both very interesting human beings for sure, but I always thought of Elon in a different way. I always thought of him as kind of, when it came to PayPal, he was like the second fiddle.
yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, I definitely think in the PayPal
Or more
scenario,
of a shareholder to a point, because for financial services to be what it was, I'm Elon is smart, but I didn't think he was on Peter Thiel's level, because Peter Thiel after PayPal goes to basically work in what was it, capital management.
yeah, I mean, it's difficult to quantify somebody's intelligence, and I think they're both brilliant without question, and in so many different ways. For me, when I look at like a guy like Elon Musk, who has a track record, yeah, he started his own companies too earlier, a video game company. If you haven't read the book, which I'm sure you've read, but if the listeners haven't read a book about him, by what's his name, JD Vance, I think his name is, something like that. But
I'm gonna have to check that book out.
fantastic book.
This.
You really should. I think his name's JD Vance. But point being, it really gives you the entire story up to probably mid 2000s. I want to say, it's, I don't know when it came out, but probably 2010 or so. And it does a beautiful job of giving the entire story, including the earliest Tesla days, including his video game startup when he was a kid, including the company that he started, the Maps, company that he started with his brother, including the PayPal story. And yeah, I mean, there's so much intricacy in each one of those ventures, but Elon does very, very well finding, like, being able to look in the future and having the vision. I mean, he's thinking hundreds of years into the future, but he's the best problem solver, I would say, on the planet. His ability to solve problems, I think, is his secret power. And that is why he's able to take what would seem like impossible scenarios and make them possible, like landing a rocket back on the ground, building an electric vehicle from the ground up. It becomes, arguably the best transportation mechanism that we have for individuals. I would say, if you haven't driven a Tesla, that's my experience. Like, nothing beats it. And by the way, he's also a very challenging guy to work for. not the easiest guy as a manager. Like he has extremely,
That's what the media usually
yeah,
goes with about. Now, I'm sure he's a very, I'm sure he's a very interesting person depending on the time of day that you're catching him, and he has an interesting work ethic. But what the media always goes around basically doing is, like usual, when they don't like someone, they basically start throwing around some of the weirdest insults that I've ever heard. Like, for example, I don't know if it's true or not, you can tell me this, but when they call him a white supremacist, is that doing him a disservice? Because you know how the media is.
well, that's where I think they are headline chasing a bit. I also
Yeah.
think Elon's careless. I do not think he's. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know what's going on in his mind. I think he probably has some deep down some biases that exist, but we all do.
Of
And
course, we all have biases. Look,
yeah,
I don't agree with, and it's going to sound very funny. I stay out of what's going on worldwide now, and I have my own separate beliefs as somebody born in the United States of America. But I look at a lot of things and don't think behaviors that I see going on are all completely race related. I
yeah,
think it's person. I was always raised with the idea that it doesn't matter what race you are, but it's how you behave.
yeah.
And some people behave differently than others.
I couldn't agree more. And I think with Elon, I think he's always looking for the greater good. Like to him, it's like, how do we create an interplanetary species? And which is like, if we're really looking, this is where you look hundreds of years in the future. And in his mind, he wants to do it faster. But like, how do you really create a civilization that can survive outside of this rock that's flying through the sky at 64,000 miles per hour, whatever it is? In Elon's mind, he's thinking of that. He's thinking of humanity. And yeah, probably has some biases like we all do. But I think deep down, he does care about humans. And I don't think he's overtly anti-Semitic or overtly hates this race or that race. I don't think that. I could be wrong because you don't know what goes into somebody's mind. By the way, I looked up that book. It's by Ashley Vance. It's Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, and the quest for a fantastic future. So
Might want to send this to me in email after this, and then I'll just
yeah,
look it up on Amazon because
sure.
honestly, when I look at a lot of the tech CEOs today, I wouldn't say I think they're weird people. They're just in a completely different world from you and me.
That's a true statement. Yeah, I would say very much so. If you look at Elon's day to day, your mind would like be spinning, and as would mine. I mean, it's just when he goes somewhere, his security detail divides up. They go to two different places just to make sure that one, there's two spots for him to go, but like people don't know where he's going next. He may go to point A or point B, and his entire day is mapped out in that way. And he's got, obviously a lot of kids. How often he sees them, who knows? But I know dividing his time between SpaceX and Tesla and everything
And
else he's doing.
Twitter, which is X.
Yeah, I mean, boring company. I mean, he's not as involved anymore. Neuralink, the list goes on and on. I mean,
I have my separate opinions with him again, like I said. Like, for example, what he's doing with Twitter, I don't even really think you could put much of a blame on him because this was the last two leaders that messed everything up before he came in, and he went around on the platform itself saying, "Oh, well, what would happen if I bought Twitter? I bet I could do a good job." And he made a big joke about it, but
yeah,
from what we're seeing on the outside, now he gets to the challenge of running the company, and immediately he's hated on the LinkedIn platform for being anti-remote work, for demanding to have people back in the office, this and that. Listen, you and I are both in our own ways founders. I'm sure you sympathize with him from a founding, aspect because you worked with him and you got a good idea. And I could only imagine what's going on through his head. But I will say this, especially because I've given this as advice before when I've told people, if you really want a good networking tool from a marketing aspect, what we do is terrific for that. Because just think about this. My favorite thing on the whole LinkedIn on the whole LinkedIn platform. Nobody ever defines what networking is. What you and I are doing is effectively networking. What their concepts of networking are going into a recruiter's inbox. I don't consider that networking. I don't know from your
Yeah, I think
days what
networking
you
is building
consider.
relationships. Yeah, I mean, networking to me is really about building relationships. Sure, could it start as part of the process networking, having that first way to engage, whether that be through a comment, through a post you make, through an introduction, through meeting somebody at an event. I mean, there's lots of ways it could start, but networking evolves far past the spark of a relationship. Going back to your thought, because I think it's important, I want to highlight this. I don't think it's mutually exclusive what the previous operators of Twitter/X did versus what Elon. They're not like I think it could be shared blame. Do I think Elon's innocent? No. Do I think he's caused everything? No. So I think, like most things, the truth probably lands somewhere in the middle. And I think Elon, I mean, like in some ways he's his own worst enemy. In some ways he's his, he's obviously his greatest strength, right? Like
I think if I took a look at him, I think he's in over his head with Twitter.
I think so
This is
too.
definitely not his cup of tea for running a business. When
I
you
would agree with you.
manufacturing, I
Yes.
trust you with manufacturing. I
Yes.
trust you with the boring company, but social media is not something you understood. You joked about it on a platform about buying it with all your cryptocurrency. Now you have the chance to run it. And from me and everybody else's perspective, end user, and we're going to touch on this last topic, which is effectively a social network is a digital product.
Yeah.
A social network is digital. This is about relationship building. Especially with software engineers and employees who he's probably worked with on some level in manufacturing. What you did in manufacturing is not social media. So you kind of need to, at some point, probably change some of your philosophies that worked in the past for you when you're looking at a social network.
Yeah. No, man, you hit the nail on the head. Where his zone of genius is there engineering involved? Is there manufacturing involved? Are we building something? Are we creating a product that is a hard product that people will use or will allow you to go from point A to point B, be it a rocket ship, a car, a train, fast-paced train, Neuralink. I think that's his zone of genius. That's his sweet spot. He's able to ask the questions to understand. Now, he's so smart. Could he reverse engineer a digital product or a social media? I would not bet against Elon. Here's why. Even though he is not the person, he could find the people, and he is smart enough, I hope, to step aside and allow other people who do thrive in that to make it work. So he could still make it work because he's Elon Musk, because he's got all his own financial backing, but also the trust of so many people that will support whatever he does. So I learned this the hard way. Don't bet against Elon Musk.
No, I wouldn't bet against him.
I'm not saying
either,
you would, but I'm saying generally.
It is going to take him a while, especially with running a social network, to finally figure out what's going to work. Because, example, with Meta, Instagram charges for verification, and I don't even think they should really be doing that either, but that's not my business because that's Mark Zuckerberg. So, Mark Zuckerberg does what Mark Zuckerberg wants. That's not my place to criticize him. So, hold on,
I have a question for you. Elon Musk, is he on the spectrum? Bill Gates, is he on the spectrum? Mark Zuckerberg, is he on the spectrum?
Yeah, the way they act, yeah, I do seriously believe that they are.
Well, and when you say that, what
I
is
know
that?
Elon was diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah, when you say the way they act, what does that mean to you? What, if you were to put into words?
I think they're very misunderstood by the media. That's a huge problem because if you notice sometimes, Elon, to me right now, looks more confident, but at one point you could tell where the disabilities come in. Because one thing I just came across today on LinkedIn that I thought was interesting, that's worth a share, that most people that I don't think a lot of these career coaches fully understand between you and me. Confidence, you can't tell somebody who's experienced up to 20 years of pigeonholing and, low self-esteem, be positive. If they're used to defeat, if they're used to being rejected, you can't
Yeah.
just change that overnight.
Yeah.
I
That's
can
a great
tell
point,
when I
man.
look at them where sometimes they look nervous, when they're being interviewed. If you take a look at them from my eyes as well, it's
Mm.
interesting to see that sometimes you can get very nervous when you're being interviewed or you don't understand something, so you want to try to think about it. That's where the media, in my perspective, probably shouldn't be labeling people that they don't understand.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate your perspective and your viewpoint, the lens that you look through. And I think you've made some really, really good points. This is a topic that I would love to go deeper on, man. It's really fascinating to me.
I
And
think we
yeah,
can do more collaborations. When I just put up the post the other day for the audio room, and we'll do more podcasts. I'm thinking fireside chat.
yeah,
Fireside chat would be a good idea. You and I
I'd love
could
to.
conveniently meet and produce these on a bi-weekly or a weekly basis. We'll talk about that afterwards for sure, because the last two things I want to touch on for this are: tell me a little bit about Insight Media and Believe Media. And then lastly, do you believe what I've done between LinkedIn and my 64 subscribers on the podcast was nothing short of reasonably good showing up? Not hard work, but just being present on a platform.
Well, I no, what I love about you is your energy, what you bring from you're always going to be transparent, direct, and to your point earlier, you're not going to do it in a mean-spirited way, but it is a spirited way, but not a mean-spirited way, which I love. I love that type of energy. And so I would absolutely love the opportunity to collaborate with you and do an audio room. I think we could pose a question for that room that would really bring in the listener and the contributor. Because that what I love about those types of platforms is it's all about interacting. And interaction is something that most podcasts don't do as good a job as they could, even though, yeah, inherently a podcast is not an interactive space or medium. It can be, though, if you welcome it. And with you, what you get with an audio room on LinkedIn is it by nature has that component to it. So to your question, and as I think about the kind of you and what you're doing and bringing in listeners, like I would say without question, bring that. And you asked another question, the main question, which I forgot there. What was
Marketing
insight.
tool.
No,
A
insight.
podcast is a marketing medium. I
Yeah.
remember one of the posts saying alone by itself, unless you attach digital products to it or
Yeah, yeah,
affiliate marketing, it's not
yeah,
going to make money.
yeah.
But it can serve in one thing that I wanted to circle back on. And I tell this to job seekers: you can do this. This isn't a bad way for you to network if
Yeah.
you're in a job search, but you have to be willing to do three things. You're going to be up insane hours at the night, not being able to sleep. I'm sure any entrepreneur can attest to that. You have to ask yourself what stage in your life you're at. Because if you're not happy with what you have, this is a reason to do something like this. I'll give you a good example. I watch YouTube. So I watch five to eight creators a week, 3 to 4 videos a day, back and forth while I'm on my commute sometimes. The reason I've been able to pull this off and what you've liked is because I'm watching multiple creators a day. That
Mhm.
helped me form a character for this.
Who do you watch?
I watch mediocre tutorials and reviews, Rational National, I watched the Pat McAfee show first. You know, I love sports. Besides Pat McAfee, what other? Right now, I've gotten into Tipsy Bartender. This guy's utterly friggin' hilarious when he, puts together his short form content.
Mhm.
Who else besides Rational National? Are you familiar with Louis Rossman, The Right to Repair?
Mm-mm. No.
Check that YouTube channel
Okay.
out. You'll get an idea of
Okay.
where I got the outspoken part of myself from, in addition, because
Yeah.
that's how New Yorkers are
Yeah, I
in a
love it.
nutshell.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, man.
We call things out that we agree or disagree with, but we do it in a way where it's eloquent.
Yeah. Well,
Louis
first of all,
Rossman's Right to Repair is a great YouTube channel to watch
yeah,
because he does a lot of review. He talks about content. He talks about technology and board repair and computer repair and gadget repair.
got it. Okay. I'm going to check those out. I got a couple for you to check out, and then I'll answer your question that I remembered. Jay Klaus, love his stuff. He's come into the scene in the last year. Fantastic for creators. Got a show called Creator Science. Colin and Samir, you may have heard of them. They're interviewing a lot of really interesting people. They just interviewed, who was
What
it?
was the first one?
Jay Klaus, Clousc, I want to say. He's on
Yeah, Jay
LinkedIn too.
Klaus,
Yeah. And then Colin and Samir.
Colin and Samir. I think I subscribed to their
You
letter.
probably have seen them. They've been around a little while. I also like John Usai. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but I think it's Usai. He worked at Instagram and YouTube. He's got about 400,000 subscribers. He's got a show called Created. So those are creator centric shows. All of them interview really interesting people. So Colin and Samir just interviewed the CEO of YouTube. Jay Klaus has interviewed some like really heavy hitters in the like YouTube space that have either mastered the craft themselves or worked directly with some of the bigger players. Like they work closely with Mr. Beast or the editor for Logan Paul, like those sorts of things. Really interesting content, and I like their direction. I'm going to check out Cody Sanchez though, because I do like some of the work that she does on LinkedIn.
We've seen it because it's the same stuff she puts on Instagram.
Okay. Yeah,
It's similar to the stuff she puts on Instagram. Besides her, check out Rational National. He does a lot of political commentary.
Okay.
You may or may not like it, and I don't know exactly where you are politically, and I'll leave
where do you
that.
think I am? Where do you guess I am?
You're liberal.
Why? Just because I live in LA?
Not necessarily, because you worked in have it. Here's kind of a little bit of a giveaway. Solar.
Okay.
Traditionally, conservative people prefer oil and gas. But
no, you're wrong. This is crazy. This is interesting you say this. Most of my customers in LA were right wing.
Interesting. So where would you be? Because I will tell you where I am if you tell me where you are.
I don't have any problem. I don't mind at all. So I'm liberal, but I'm more moderate liberal.
That's where I am, because we're both the same in this sense. Because think about it, what you have to be impartial when you do media, or it's best to be as impartial as possible.
Yeah.
So where you and I are at is I'm liberal. I believe in some progressive things, but I don't push anyone to agree with me because I know I can't get.
I enjoy watching Ben Shapiro. I love watching Ben Shapiro. I love watching.
I will watch Ben Shapiro, but I don't agree with anything that
I don't agree with a lot of what he says, but I do. I like his way of. Some of what he says I agree with. Most of his political stances I don't, but I'm amused by him, and I think he's in a lot of ways brilliant, and certainly like I like the way that he
is brilliant, but when you watch him against college students versus older gentlemen, that's where you kind of get an idea that he's brilliant when he's debating a college student, but when you put him against an older conservative man like Andrew Neil, he looked frigging terrible. He acted like.
That's interesting.
The funniest thing was debating Andrew Neil. I'm like, you're debating an older conservative man who literally has.
What do you think?
at this point. He's used to morons like you.
What do you think of Jordan Peterson?
I liked Jordan when he was just becoming popular and he was at least sensible to listen to. Now I just think he's too crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, another YouTuber or a podcaster who I like, and I mean Lex Friedman and Andrew Huberman are two just absolute standouts. So, yeah, I mean we could talk about this all day. So I
Yeah,
didn't answer your question
and
though, man. I didn't answer your question because it's not that it
finish.
matters that much. Insight Studios is really the parent company of my current company, Podify, and it started when I first started my podcast. And Believe Entertainment was the foundation of what I built my movie on. So I movie rolling, and I don't currently operate Believe Entertainment. In fact, I sold the domain, which if you ever want to make some money on domains, like domains can actually make
I
money.
have a domain on Amazon, and that's the next part of the AWS Route 72. Part of the
Yeah.
New Year project is going to be starting to build up the domain. So let's end on this note. Tell us about what Podify does from a mission standpoint and what products you sell digitally.
Sure. Yeah. So we help thought leaders build their platform. And the thought leader could be an author, a speaker, a founder, or entrepreneur, anybody that has an idea to share, but they need a bigger or better platform to share it. We do that. So we have an audio production team, video production team, social media team, design team, and a copywriting team that help to synthesize the message in various mediums and channels. Omni-channel. So if you look at Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, of course, podcasts, newsletters, any way you could disseminate and share information in a meaningful way, we help to buy back time so that thought leaders can focus on thought leadership. And we do all the heavy lifting from a production and marketing standpoint.
Interesting. I'm glad we could finish on that note. So I look forward to more collaborations, and we'll be co-producing Audio Room. And I think within what I do as well, I might even at this point have you also start co-producing with me opinionated collective panel discussions, because I found today doing this with you, you have the same mind I do.
I love it.
And that's
Hey,
rare to find on these platforms.
it is. No, I appreciate you. And like I said, I love the spirit and the energy and the openness that you have, but also the directness that you have. It's rare to find. Grateful for the opportunity and looking forward to the next chance we have to collaborate.
Oh, of course. All right, my friend. Thank you for coming by today. I'm glad we had you as a guest, and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and to all your listeners. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good day.
All
All
right, you
right.
too. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.